my name's Matt Morrison. I'm General Manager of North Byron Parklands. Parklands is home to two of Australia's iconic contemporary music events, Splendour in the Grass and the Falls Festival. And I work very closely with them when they come to the site to help manage a whole range of environmental issues. But most importantly, or one of the very important ones, is energy management. Events of this size, we're talking patrons of around 20 to 30,000, most of them camping on site. So you can consider it as a small town, if you like, having all the various needs of water and power. And a big part of the management of that is getting the energy mix right, determining what energy requirements are needed for the event area, which includes staging, the camping areas for lighting and amenities and other aspects required for that area, and also for the back of house, so the sort of engine, if you like, of the event area. Without having a number of systems in place to capture this information, to track it and to analyse it, it's very difficult for organisations to determine a number of things in relation to energy, primarily what it costs them, opportunities for improvement, opportunities for substitution, and also lightening their footprint. And in most cases, these don't have to be sophisticated systems. I've always found that with working with events or tours, the simple process of starting the documentation is a very significant step. Stating what the aims and the objectives of that organisation are, and it may be just to reduce, it may be to avoid, so looking at the energy hierarchy, it could be avoiding energy in certain parts of their activities, it could be reducing energy, it could be substituting energy sources and types, and it could be offsetting, which is at the bottom of the hierarchy. By starting that documentation process, it allows organisations to drill down and identify some of the hotspots across their activities. In certain areas, it's very difficult to affect change and to have some form of energy reduction outcome. But in other areas, there's some really significant gains to be made. So that systems approach, I think, is a very beneficial one. Some of the biggest challenges for looking at a more energy efficient outcome usually start at the organisational level, and I tend to find that organisations fall into three sort of categories: the sort of the deniers, if you like, the confused, and the advocates. And the deniers, I think they're a very small proportion if we just focus on the music industry at this stage, who don't think there's really much of a problem in terms of conserving resources, reducing energy, greenhouse gas emissions and all those sorts of things. A much larger pool, and the more common pool, are the people that are confused about energy efficiency. They recognise that there's a need to chase this down. They even see a business benefit to it, but they're just not quite sure how to go about it. It's not their core business. And then there's the energy advocates, as I call them, who have done the research, they've undertaken the necessary steps to capture the information, they've had someone analyse it or themselves, and they've started to make those changes. So in terms of challenges, it's first identifying I guess the headspace of the particular people in charge of that organisation, and trying to influence the change at that level. Once you've got some buy-in from the organisation itself, the next biggest challenge is working with data. If you don't have the data, it's really sort of Russian roulette in terms of where you're going to put your hard-earned dollars to affect change. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of organisations want a couple of outcomes from energy efficiency. They want to save money, but they also would like to lighten their load on the environment. And so data is pretty well key to all of that. Identifying in your activity chain where you can make changes, where changes can either be cost neutral or cost positive, which would be preferable, of course, is critical to informing an organisation about its investment strategy, because let's face it, energy efficiency does have a cost to it. It doesn't have to be prohibitive. In many cases it's actually a small outlay, but still organisations I guess are always trying to make savings where they can, so it's important. Some of the successes that we've had, both at a venue level and at the outdoor event level, have been in the transportation area, and also in matching energy requirements to stages and lighting and those sorts of things. So with respect to transport, we've looked at opportunities to improve the logistical network and identify where we might be able to source goods and services locally that reduces the need for that transportation and also the energy consumption associated with that transportation. Where we can't source locally, looking at how we can piggyback certain goods and services and combine them on, for example, a specific semi-trailer rather than having a number of different trucks coming to site. We look at the procurement process. We see whether we can build into the purchase order with suppliers these requirements that we feel are important to us in terms of reducing that the emissions associated with that sort of activity. For energy, unfortunately, in the outdoor event industry, 9 times out of 10 we're usually away from a grid power source, and that usually means then bringing in diesel generators. So what we've looked at with diesel generators is matching the generator capacity to the draw. And again, that requires us to have an understanding of what that draw is. So we do some assessments on what the power draws are for a certain size stage, what the lighting requirements are, considering any redundancy requirements we need in case that particular power source goes offline. We need to make sure that we keep our patrons happy and the artists able to do their job. And by matching the right KVA generator to the activity, we've found we've got some good efficiency gains in terms of reducing diesel fuel usage. Substitution plays an important part as well. So there's a substitution at a number of different levels. It might be at the end use, so looking again at more efficient lighting systems, more efficient PA systems, and even just general event lighting itself, more efficient lighting opportunities there. I guess one of the other areas that is important is it's not just about when the event takes place, it's also the organisation practicing what it preaches. And so a lot of the energy efficient elements really need to be embedded back at headquarters. So again, getting buy-in from your staff is really important. Having that policy that talks about switching things off, substitution, looking for opportunities for more energy efficient appliances in the office. It sounds small, but I think what it starts to do is to build a culture within that organisation that, hey, energy efficiency is important. It's something that we are now practicing as an organisation. There are some aims and objectives around it, and we'd like to then, as an extension of that policy, see that happen within our own event. And just by that very nature of doing that, it tends to then creep into the procurement process, into the supply chain, and all of a sudden suppliers and other people that provide goods and services recognise that this organisation is serious about energy efficiency and will then be a little bit more receptive to that. I think to another aspect for any music or touring or event organisation too is to see whether they can engage their patrons. The two really big leverage points I see for change in this area are the artists. The artists have an incredible ability to influence their patrons across a whole range of political and other important environmental considerations. But by empowering and educating the patrons, and that could be through your website, that could be through information that you disperse through a whole range of social media mechanisms. Just by imparting that information starts to empower people because they have a think about the issue, and then they start to demand it. And once you get the demand, let's face it, the patrons pay all our bills. Once they have a desire to see certain changes take place in whatever that sphere is, you can bet your bottom dollar that those changes invariably then get incorporated by a good business, because anyone who ignores our customers at the end of the day, they do so at their own peril. So energy efficiency is, I think, about looking inwardly at what the organisation wants to achieve and how it will go about that, and we've talked a little bit about documentation and systems and processes, but looking outwardly as well and seeing how they can recruit and harness their customer base. So it's kind of looking vertically up and down the supply chain. We're in a really exciting space at the moment. From the venue perspective and also the two events, we've got this world-class sustainable event venue, which we're now garnering support from our board to look at alternative energy generation sources. So we're going to hopefully be moving very shortly into the wonderful world of solar and possibly also wind energy. Again, not being connected to the grid means that we have to look at opportunities for self-sufficiency, and we'll be working with a number of local service providers, particularly for solar. In the Northern Rivers there are probably a disproportionately large number of service providers. We've got great sun, we've got a beautiful site with northern aspects, and we're really going to throw ourselves fully into this because we think there's going to be a number of advantages, and the first advantage is obviously some self-sufficiency. There will hopefully be a reasonable return on investment, so from a cost perspective we think the numbers will likely stack up, but reputationally as well, and I think that's an element that a lot of organisations neglect, and reputation's really important. I think if you can manage your activities and particularly your externalities, those things that you generate outside of your space, if you can manage those well in a sustainable way, I think that's not only good for the environment, it's good for the product that you operate. Invariably when an organisation is going through a process of change, it's usually led by one or more environmental champions. And for those people who are considering looking at improving their energy efficiency, I think starting with a discrete project's a really important way of influencing your decision makers in your organisation. Sometimes one of the dangers is trying to undertake everything at once, and there's a whole range of competing economic and other interests within an organisation that can sometimes overshadow that good work. What I've found is that by undertaking a discrete project, gathering data for that project, looking at the costs and benefits of it, and it could be as small as changing out all your halogen lights for LED lights. By putting it all in a box and being able to look at the inputs and the outputs and then being able to confidently communicate that to your decision makers, I have found is the best way to affect change. It gets runs on the board for you, and it also provides a bit of a glide path for then moving towards the next project. So I'd strongly recommend starting small but thinking big.